Last week, Project Veritas released undercover footage of an Iowa staffer for Bernie, saying things that were so shocking, I can't repeat them on YouTube, otherwise my video will be taken down. I am not exaggerating. That's the case. He was talking about putting conservatives into gulags. He was talking about essentially ending their lives. I got to be careful about how I describe this. Project Veritas has now released another expose on a staffer in South Carolina saying essentially the same things. Here you can see on the screen, Martin Weisgerber saying, what will help is when we send all the Republicans to re-education camps. And that's not even the worst of what he said. He called for the ending of certain people's lives. Again, I got to be very, very careful. I'm going to say something very bold. I believe at this point, I can walk you through exactly why Bernie Sanders is unfit to be the president of the United States. It's not just about his unwillingness to call out his staff. We have seen numerous staff members for Bernie Sanders called out for very, very offensive things. He recently had to fire a staff member for offensive posts that were dug up on Twitter. We can now see that at the very least, Bernie Sanders has a serious staffing problem. He's got a series of supporters who believe extremist things, and he is unwilling to call them out. It goes beyond this. You see, recently, supporters of Bernie Sanders called out how impeachment was going to hurt Bernie, and they think that Nancy Pelosi withheld the articles of impeachment against Trump to jam up Bernie just before the Iowa caucus. That was Bernie's supporters saying that. Well, Donald Trump came out and agreed and said it sounds like the fix is against Bernie. So Bernie attacked Trump and his own supporters. Listen, Bernie didn't specifically call out his supporters, but I think it's fair to say that when his supporters said, hey, this is happening, and Trump goes, I agree, and then Bernie says, no, you're wrong, he's targeting his own supporters. Let me tell you another story, and we'll walk through all of this. A Bernie Sanders supporter recently wrote an op-ed saying Joe Biden is corrupt. A Bernie Sanders supporter did. In response, Biden is corrupt was trending on Twitter. Not entirely because of Bernie Sanders supporters, but yes, many of them. And many high-profile progressive Bernie supporters agreed and said it's objectively true. Then Bernie Sanders apologized to Joe Biden. Yep, that's right. Once again, turning his back on his own supporters. What did Bernie Sanders do in 2016? After all of his supporters denounced Hillary Clinton, he endorsed her and he campaigned for her. And now Hillary Clinton has come out saying nobody likes him and he's got a culture problem. He surrounds himself with awful people. Bernie Sanders is so weak that not only will he do nothing about his own extremist staff, he turns his back on his own supporters. So let me ask you a question before we dive into this story. If you're a supporter of Bernie, high-profile progressives, how do you justify the fact that you on Twitter agreed with the op-ed about Biden being corrupt, agreed with the video released by Sanders that said, that showed Joe Biden saying he wanted to cut Social Security, but now seeing Bernie Sanders apologize to Joe Biden for his supporters calling him corrupt? How do you justify a man who is so pathetic, he sides with his own abusers against his own supporters? Now I can understand why he wouldn't take an endorsement from Donald Trump. But how insane should you be to look at your opponent in the 2020 race who's agreeing with your supporters, and then you tell both him and your supporters, you're all wrong? Okay, if you're a supporter of Bernie at this point, I think you're a hypocrite and a liar, because the dude clearly does not have your back. So you must be really desperate to have his back. Bernie Sanders is both physically and mentally unfit to be president. He is both physically and mentally too weak. But let's actually get into the news here. Otherwise, I'll just keep prattling on. Now that I've sufficiently made everyone who likes Bernie extremely angry, you can support my work by going to timcast.com/donate. There are several ways you can give. There's a PayPal option, a crypto option, a physical address. But of course, the best thing you can do is share this video because it's going to make Bernie Sanders fans very angry. But I'll tell you this. I get it. It makes Bernie's fans angry. And all you have to do now is comment and tell me why you would defend a man who won't defend you, who would actually apologize to the corrupt Joe Biden after his own supporter drafted the op-ed. How pathetic is that? How could you defend a guy who endorsed and campaigned for Hillary Clinton? Now, after all of that went down, he turned his back on his supporters to endorse her. That's why he lost a lot of people to Trump. Now Hillary is, well, she's putting the knife in his back, and he deserves it. Bernie is deserving all of this. I'll tell you what, man. I have no problem defending the guy from the media smears. They say his supporters are bigots and that he targets women and the Bernie bros. Oh, give me a break. intersectional feminist Bernie Sanders telling Elizabeth Warren a woman can't win is insane. Hillary Clinton won the popular vote, as if Bernie Sanders would really ever think or say anything like that. So to clarify, some progressives have said maybe Bernie did say it, but he meant that she couldn't, that Americans were too sexist. No, Hillary Clinton won the popular vote. It's literally fake news. But I'll tell you what, Bernie refuses to defend himself. He won't defend himself to save his own campaign. How will he defend you? He won't. He won't even defend his own supporters calling Biden corrupt. Check this out. Here we have the top trends. This was earlier this morning. Biden is corrupt was number 2 in the U.S. Now, it was mostly Biden fans angry with Bernie and Trump supporters for calling Biden corrupt. But many of these people were saying things like, because of Bernie, this is happening. Well, as Bernie's supporters called out Joe Biden for being corrupt, and he is, good old Bernie Sanders apologizes. This is absolutely pathetic, completely pathetic. So I'll tell you, I want to make sure I tidy up the Veritas bit with a neat little bow. We now see that the problem of Bernie's staffers is not unique to one office and one staffer. It's at least in 2 as of now. And I'm willing to bet that Project Veritas has more to release. But let me tell you something else. While we can rag on Bernie and talk about the media bias against him, I will point out about 10 or 11 or more, maybe more, Iowa directors for Bernie Sanders locked down their social media. No news. You'd think that would be a big story. That's huge. His campaign staff in Iowa just before the big caucus shutting down. Nope. This guy that's being exposed by Veritas now, he also deleted his social media and is locking it down. Perhaps now, with 2 different offices affected, you think the news would get on top of this. Well, we'll see what happens. Of course, Fox News is. But back to the bigger point. Bernie's unwillingness to call out and condemn the rhetoric is a bad sign. But more importantly, he's absolutely unwilling to defend his own supporters' positions. CBS News reports, Bernie Sanders apologized to former Vice President Joe Biden on Monday for an op-ed written by one of his campaign surrogates that claimed Biden has a big corruption problem. Quote, it is absolutely not my view that Joe is corrupt in any way, and I'm sorry that op-ed appeared. Are you kidding me? Who thinks Joe Biden is not corrupt? I guess Adam Schiff? Okay, let's be real. Resistance Twitter, I guess. But even the progressives think Biden is corrupt. They're tweeting about it. It's trending nationwide, or it was earlier. Yet Bernie Sanders won't even you know what, man? I don't even know who Bernie Sanders is trying to attract. He's trying to get the activist vote, but the activists think Biden's corrupt. They hate Biden. Who likes Biden? Let me tell you something before we read on. A lot of people complain that I don't lead my videos complaining about Donald Trump. There have been a couple, but really not that many. You know why? For the most part, it's all the news ever is. There's nothing I can really add to the story about Trump. And the reality is Trump's not that bad. So here I am in this position where the media is not calling out Bernie Sanders' staffer, and they're going overboard on Donald Trump's 2 scoops of ice cream or his slightly larger than average salt and pepper shaker. I'm sorry, I'm not going to do a video about it. Oh, you want me to complain about the economy or the trade deal or the tariffs? The economy's doing great. So certainly I can rag on Trump for all of his character defects. He's a nasty guy. He imitates body slamming people, but it happens all the time. What am I supposed to do? Like, oh, lo and behold, Trump's doing it again. Let me tell you something. I have ragged on Joe Biden. Joe Biden should not be running. He's too old. He can barely speak. He's got a touchy problem, if you know what I mean. And he doesn't know where he is. Did I say that already? He doesn't know where he is. Okay. Now I'm going to say this. At this point, based on the apologies, the just the pathetic behavior, Bernie Sanders is out. If you're a supporter, how do you justify him apologizing to Joe Biden over this? They say the op-ed published in The Guardian by law professor Zephyr Teachout claims Biden has perfected the art of taking big contributions, then representing his corporate donors at the cost of middle and working class Americans. Do you know that there were several articles written that said Joe Biden was corrupt? There was Politico, the soft of the nation. The left has repeatedly called Biden corrupt. And here is Bernie Sanders saying, I don't believe Joe is corrupt in any way. Who are you pandering to? I don't know. I don't know how you could, if you're a progressive and you like Bernie's policies, I don't know how you could support a man who would defend someone as crooked as Joe Biden. Here's this tweet from John Levine. I think I'm pronouncing your name right. I can't pronounce names. Forgive me. Bernie Sanders gave Hillary Clinton a complete pass on the emails when he didn't need to. When he lost the primary, he endorsed and campaigned for her too. But how quickly we forget. What's the repayment to Mr. Bernie Sanders for bending over for the corrupt crony Democrat warmonger Hillary Clinton? It's this. Hillary Clinton on Bernie Sanders, quote, "Nobody likes him. Nobody wants to work with him." Man, this is just absolutely disgusting on the part of Bernie Sanders. You know what I see with Bernie? A bunch of bullies are pushing him around, and he looks to his own fans and supporters. And then when the bullies insult his fans, he goes, yeah. And he's one of those like nerdy kids who's desperately trying to fit in with the cool kids. So he's extremely self-deprecating and pathetic looking. He's actually siding with his abusers, Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden, against his own supporters. How ludicrous. It's just pathetic. The story from Axios. Hillary Clinton makes her feelings clear about Senator Bernie Sanders in a new documentary about her career, saying that, quote, "Nobody likes him and nobody wants to work with him." Driving the news in an interview with the outlet about Hulu's forthcoming Hillary, the former Secretary of State didn't let up about her 2016 primary opponent, refusing to commit to endorse and campaign for the Vermont senator should he win the Democratic nomination this cycle. Good. She shouldn't. He's too weak. He's both physically and mentally too weak to be president. She goes even further in the documentary, claiming that Sanders got nothing done and calling him a career politician. It's all just baloney, and I feel so bad that people got sucked into it, she said. What she's saying on possibly endorsing Sanders, saying, quote, "I'm not going to go there yet. We're still in a very rigorous primary season. I will say, however, that it's not only him. It's the culture around him. It's his leadership team. It's his prominent supporters. It's his online Bernie bros and their relentless attacks on lots of his competitors, particularly the women. And I really hope people are paying attention to that because it should be worrisome that he has permitted this culture. Not only permitted, he seems to really be very much supporting it." Dare I say, I'm about to utter something I never thought I would say. Hillary Clinton is right. She's right. Not completely right, but a broken clock can be right twice a day. I really, really do not like Hillary Clinton. She is a crony corporate Democrat warmonger, one of the worst of the worst. She is out of touch, elitist, and she is literally the epitome of what the ivory tower is. I do not like this woman. I will tell you this, though. Bernie Sanders is surrounded by anti-Semites and extremists, and he actively encourages it. Now, there was that one guy I mentioned, okay? The campaign had to fire the guy because they dug up some tweets, which were not even that bad, but they were fairly offensive. But they weren't the worst of the worst. And his supporters got angry, like, why would they fight? It was just some stupid Twitter jokes from 2010. Because Bernie's weak, dude. Now that Bernie is being dragged, or I'm sorry, now that Veritas is exposing his staffers, okay, and people like me and others are dragging Bernie over this, he won't even say anything. Dare I say it, Clinton is correct. He's not only permitting it, he seems to be very much supporting this. His staffers locked down their accounts, not a peep. Not one word to address this story from Veritas. And let me remind you, James O'Keefe tweeted about this. We saw in Axios, they tracked the engagements on the Warren-Bernie controversy and the Veritas expose. Guess which one got more interactions and engagement? Project Veritas. The bigger news story was completely ignored by Bernie because, dare I say it, he seems to be supporting it. Look, you want to tell me that he's tolerating it? I'm not going to believe it because he hired Linda Sarsour. I believe she was hired she's a campaign surrogate. Why would he bring her on? She's extremely controversial and accused by many people of being an overt anti-Semite. Why would he bring her on and this other guy? Why would he have these staffers and say nothing about it? Because Hillary's right about the culture surrounding Bernie and his leadership. They are crooked, nasty, insane people. And maybe that really represents who Bernie is. Now, I don't think Bernie is corrupt, crooked, and extremist. I really don't. I think he's a pathetic loser. I really do. I used to really like the guy because he seemed angry and righteously, he had righteous indignation behind him. When he stood up for the same things for decades, I respected that. Seeing him standing on the House floor, yelling, demanding things, saying, no, I respected that. Today, he can't even stand up to the lunatics that are taking over his campaign. BuzzFeed, I think it was, wrote a story about Bernie's complete flip-flop. Well, they called it a progressive rebirth or whatever on immigration. 2015, Bernie Sanders said, open borders is a Koch brothers proposal. About 6 or 7 months ago, Bernie Sanders said it at a rally When asked about open borders, he said something like, my God, there are too many poor people, we can't do it. Today, he sings a different tune. You know why? Because he is just a pathetic little man who does whatever it is he's told to do. And so his policies are malleable. That's it. So like I said, I used to think he was standing firm on what he believed in. Nah, not anymore. Now we can see that this guy was willing to endorse Hillary Clinton. And what does he get for it? Of course, he gets exactly what he deserves. He gets Hillary Clinton coming out, mocking and belittling him. Now, I will say, because I'm telling you, I think I'm completely right about this. Hillary Clinton is wrong to say his online Bernie bros are targeting women. That's a smear, and that's just stupid and not true. You get criticized, you get criticized. Bernie bros is nonsense. You know it's not nonsense? That we now have two different staffers that have been exposed talking about putting Republicans in gulags. We now have, 12 or 13 staffers locking down their social media, calling it just political gossip. Not a word from the campaign. No ability to actually stand up and condemn any of this stuff because he's just a weak little old man. And that's what we're learning. He seems to have almost no convictions. In 2016, on the debate stage, he said white people didn't know what it was like to be poor. That shocked me. That was a wake-up call. I thought this guy actually stood up for the working class. No. I don't know if Hillary's completely right about what she said, him being a career politician. I've heard that. I haven't fact-checked it, so by all means, correct it if it's wrong. But I will comment. My understanding is that Bernie Sanders has never had a real boss. He's never had a job outside of politics. How could he understand the working class? He's always been a political class. He is an upscale politician. Now, I think it's fair to say he's not wealthy. He's wealthy-ish today. But what people don't seem to understand when they look at Bernie, who's 78 years old with a net worth of, I think, $2 million, that's actually fairly normal for the retirement accounts accrued by people in their 70s and 80s. I do not look at Bernie Sanders as a necessarily wealthy individual. He certainly is a millionaire. It's only in the past 2 years, though, in his late 70s, he actually became particularly wealthy. Throughout most of his career, he was earning, I think, around like $200,000 a year, which is good. He's not poor by any means, but he's not this aristocrat elite. He is, however, upper class. Okay, he is $200,000 a year, career politician. He's the ivory tower. He doesn't know what it's like to work in a factory. He doesn't know what it's like to be in a union. And now we can see his true colors. Because when push comes to shove, he won't defend his own supporters. He apologizes to his bullies, and he flip-flops on policy where it matters. Whether or not immigration will be good or bad for the American worker. In a recent interview with the New York Times, they challenged him, saying, you once said that illegal immigration is bad for the American worker. And Bernie stutters and stammers. New York Times puts in so Bernie eventually says, you're right, it absolutely can drive down wages. The New York Times then does this weasel tactic where they ask him about illegal immigrants, and then they do a fake fact check where they then say, immigrants actually don't drive down wages. Full stop. Legal immigrants and illegal immigrants are completely different talking points. With illegal immigrants, okay, they can get paid under the table below minimum wage, and that can drive down wages. Legal immigrants who are here legally and can work legally have to be paid and have the same rights as citizens when they're working. You see you see the difference here. Bernie Sanders gets smeared, does nothing about it, and then flip-flops because the guy's got no spine. Now, she goes on to actually go after Bernie over Elizabeth Warren. And here's where I will give Bernie some defense. And I'm going to give, I don't know what you call it. It's a Bernie Sanders criticism defense followed by harsh criticism in that same vein. She talks about Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders and really does try to make it seem like Bernie Sanders told Elizabeth Warren that she couldn't win. This is the most insane and absurd thing because Hillary Clinton won the popular vote. Everybody knows it. So some progressives have argued maybe Bernie was saying America is too bigoted to elect a woman, right? Not that a woman can't win, but that America is, patriarchy, and so it wouldn't support a woman. Not true. That's insane. Hillary Clinton won the popular vote. Bernie knows it. Why would Bernie think otherwise? Completely fake. The problem, however, is that Bernie does nothing to push back on any of this. He just lies back like a frail, pathetic little old man and does nothing. That's a fact. I'm sorry. You can't defend it. I really do mean this right now. You're a Bernie supporter. You made it this far. Congratulations. Please comment and explain to me how you justify all of the Bernie supporters and high-profile progressives saying Biden is corrupt and then Bernie apologizing to the man. It's absolutely just pure weakness. Now I want you to imagine him negotiating with Vladimir Putin. You complain about Donald Trump, but I'll tell you this. Right now, We are looking at, in terms of the populist candidates, I don't know if Bernie will get the nomination. You have Donald Trump, who's very tall, obese, aggressive. He's a bully. He is as bully. He's a boorish bully, and he's as bully as they come. Bernie Sanders is the bullied. Bernie Sanders is getting bullied left and right and apologizing to those doing the bullying. Who do you think America is going to choose to represent their interests when it comes to the commander-in-chief, the head of the executive branch, the person giving orders to law enforcement? You think they're going to trust Bernie Sanders? No. Bernie Sanders will get pushed around left and right. He won't stand up for himself, and I can't expect him to stand up for me. So I know I probably just made a ton of Bernie Sanders supporters angry, but I'll tell you this, man. There's no justification for what Bernie is doing. Joe Biden's corrupt. We all know it. Bernie Sanders supporters, his staffers are extremists. Bernie won't do anything about it. He's too weak. He doesn't deserve to win. And I'll end by saying this. Trump is not my choice for president. I do not like the guy. I think he's funny, right? I understand his value as an entertainer that people really like. I recognize the economy is doing well. I do not want that man to be president. The challenge is, what's the alternative for America? Joe Biden? The guy can't talk right, doesn't know where he is half the time, and he touches little girls in weird ways. No, thank you. Amy Klobuchar? She's accused of abusing her own staff, throwing things at him, and she once ate a cell with a comb. Okay, that last one is a cheap shot, but she's like a gray blob of nothing. Pete Buttigieg, I shrug at. Fine, I guess, whatever. I don't even know what he's about, but at least he served in the military. Tulsi Gabbard. Hey, Tulsi Gabbard, there's some strength. She called Hillary Clinton the personification of rot. That I like. So I can respect that strength in Tulsi. She has absolutely stood up to the people who call her out and insult her. She strikes back. She won't back down. Even Andrew Yang got aggressive and called Trump a fat slob. Now, that I don't like. I don't like the crude, crass behavior. That's literally what I'm criticizing Trump for. But I'll tell you this. I don't think Biden should be running at all. He's an old man. Just get him out. He should not be running, period. Klobuchar is fake. They keep trying to make her happen. She's not really running. Get out of my face. Elizabeth Warren? Oh, she's a liar, okay? She should not be running. She is the most prolific liar in terms of getting caught lying. Why would I want her to be president? At this point, however, while I can say no Warren, no Biden, I can say no Klobuchar, no Buttigieg, I actually repeatedly said that Bernie Sanders was a lot better than all of them. I will tell you this right now. I take it back. I really do. Bernie Sanders is now, in my opinion, officially the worst candidate running on the Democratic side. You know why? Because the president needs strength, conviction. The president must refuse to back down. For when they come to the president and say move, it is the job to plant themselves firmly and say, no, you move, to quote Captain America. The job of the president is stand strong and steadfast in defense of the American people, and to an extent, make sure our military is doing the right thing. We want to make sure that we're taking action where appropriate. That involves making decisive actions to potentially end other people's lives in conflict, a very dangerous and serious and somber circumstance for the president. I believe that we have seen our presidents go above and beyond to the extreme detriment of innocent lives around the world, particularly Obama and Bush. What would Bernie Sanders do when he's supposed to be standing steadfast as commander-in-chief? No way. Absolutely not. He'd crumple in 2 seconds. He'd crumple like tissue paper. Not interested. And the American people are going to look at that. A man who had a heart attack, I mean no disrespect, but he did. Okay? He's 78. They're going to look at a man who can't even defend his own supporters, who apologizes to his bullies. And they're going to say, look, man, I'd rather have the giant oaf who's willing to body slam a reporter than the guy who crumples under pressure. Sorry, Bernie supporters. There's no way around this one. America's just not going to go for it. But at least Bernie Sanders' supporters are violent extremists, right? Maybe they'll pick up the slack for him. So when Bernie's too afraid and frail to actually stand up for himself, he'll send out his goon squad. Stick around. Next segment's coming up at 6 p.m. youtube.com/TimCastNews, and I will see you all there.